Why would I bother with this? When Falcom announced that their most recent, relatively unsuccessful gacha game would be getting a global release, no one really cared, even among fans of the series. One look at gameplay footage would remove any interest for someone thinking rationally. On top of that, I just straight up don't play mobile games or gacha games, with one exception that we'll talk about later. So why would I bother with this? Well, the number one reason is I saw images of the translation online, which is the type of cosmically awful that wraps around to being funny. Besides that, I thought playing it would serve as a good contrast to a few other games that came out right around the same time. The most obvious is Wuthering Waves, another gacha that separates itself by being an actual decent game that just happens to have a gacha stapled on. But the one I'm more interested in is another free game that came out for one of my favorite properties, Nightmare Cart. Whereas one is a game made from love and passion for the source material, the other one is So for the sake of morbid curiosity, I'm diving into the dumpster. I asked my friend how long it took him to beat Nightmare Cart, and there we go. 5 hours. That's how long I'll play this abomination for. 5 hours, or until I hit a paywall. May God have mercy on my soul. There's some games where it takes a while to figure out how good they are. Fortunately for me, this game does not waste time. Let me show you the opening cutscene and remind you that this is the global release. See if you can catch what is missing. So yeah, opening up your global release with a Japanese cutscene with no subtitles isn't the best start. The game, called Trails of Cold Steel Northern War, follows the anime of the same name. I don't really watch anime, and most people said it was mediocre anyway, so all of this is pretty new to me. The story mode begins with a new recruit named Lavi joining a mercenary band, which is part of a smaller organization that also functions as a state's military. This state is on the border of a much larger nation looking to expand its borders. I wish I could go into more detail, but that's all the stuff I could gather from reading the Wikipedia plot summary. The English translation is so fundamentally bad that I can't follow anything actually happening in the game. I can't even tell you if this shit starts before or during the war. If you pause this video at any point when text is on the screen, there's probably around a 50% chance that there's an egregious mistake. Some of my favorites include: why do you have so much item? Shinny new equipment. And my personal favorite, when viewing character bios, it's somehow translated finish reading to confirming your birth. This is not telling me to confirm my birthday or anything, it's just explaining how to read character bios. I have no idea how this happened. These are not, I should add, the best ones from the entire game, just the best ones from the first 10 minutes. As is tradition with these types of games, you're bombarded with a bunch of random shit that you don't know the value of and forced to click where the giant finger is pointing instead of stopping to explain. It's overwhelming, and it's probably meant to be. I'm not going to get into a rant about how this stuff is predatory. There's about 3 trillion videos on YouTube that talk about why mobile stuff is bad. But just in terms of how it affects the game, it does the opposite of what a tutorial is supposed to do. I have no idea what any of the things do, and the removal of any option for failure means I don't know what's causing the success. There's no point in doing tutorials like this if you don't simplify things to allow players to understand. Okay, let's get into the meat of the game, which is combat. In some of my past videos, I think I've sort of underexplored combat sections, especially in my previous Trails reviews. So I promise the brevity here isn't just me doing that again, it's just that there's absolutely nothing going on here. Northern War is an auto-battler. This is a genre I'm not super familiar with, at least in terms of mobile games. I've played a decent amount of auto chess games like Teamfight Tactics and Dota Underlords, and there's some of the same DNA here. You place 5 units on a board, set their positioning, and they fight automatically with your only input coming in the form of deciding when to use your ultimate ability. This is purely timing though, you can't aim it or anything. But whereas those games were isolated 30-minute matches where the fun was competing to see who utilized their limited resources the best, this is a game that progresses more linearly. As such, I'm not really sure what the hook is supposed to be here. Team composition is the only thing I can really think of, experimenting around to make the strongest 5-man group. But your tactical options are so inherently limited that even that doesn't strike me as meaningful. The area in which you can place your units is very small and mostly just amounts to tanks up front, healers, and back. The lack of player agency is likely intentional to force people into the various progression systems, and it harms any chance of this style of combat working well. It's also a tremendously weird fit for the series as it has almost no relation to anything else Trails has ever done. Outside of battle, you can, of course, progress in tons of different ways. There's also equipment, quartz, ascension, a few other things, but it's mostly about just making your number bigger than the enemy's number. After looking around, I return to the story as I begin Hour 2. After trudging through the indecipherable cutscenes for about 20 minutes, I get access to the gacha. Using the free pulls, I find a bunch of characters that aren't related to the story in any conceivable way and add them to my party. As I scroll through my new party members, I catch that every single character except for 4 generic portraits at the bottom are 5 stars. This caused me to laugh so hard I actually started choking. I also see the unfortunate news that at least some of the character descriptions have been patched. Some of the outright wrong ones have been replaced, although I think this was probably just because they were assigned to the wrong characters rather than being retranslated. The second hour is almost entirely uneventful as I continue going through the campaign. I unlock about 47 different features and bonuses which all require constant upkeep. There are a few nuggets of comedy here though. Around 20 minutes in, the game gets the name of the country it's taking place in wrong, and at around 27 minutes I get an ad for something that is apparently on 900% discount before I click to the next screen and see the discounted price is $45. This is about the same as it would cost to buy the entire Trails in the Sky trilogy on sale. Story becomes much lighter in this second hour as you'll do multiple unrelated battles in between every cutscene. And while combat is boring, it at least doesn't give me a headache in the way parsing the terrible translation does. Around 30 minutes in, I'm given a supposed to lose fight, after which a gigantic full screen ad displays. As you might expect, this blasts me with ways I could pay to get strong enough to beat it. Luckily, I can spend some of the free stuff the game has been showering me with to get through, but unluckily that means I have to keep playing. I finish up Hour 2 with more of the story and decide on a new project to start Hour 3. Mobile games are infamous for having catastrophically bad UIs, and this game is no exception. So to kill time in this adventure without having to actually play the game, let's explore this entire UI, starting at the top left and working counterclockwise. First up is our power level. This is the number that determines whether we win or lose fights. This is fine, and below it is an icon that takes us to Sepith, which is our first currency. The left of the screen has a big list of events. First is the login rewards, which you don't actually get all at once and need to continuously claim over the course of about 90 minutes. Below that is top up, which is our first direction towards the shop, but obviously not the last. After this, we have activities, which is a bunch of ongoing events and more directions towards the shop. Next is Pack, which is yet another direction towards the shop. The shop here has 9 different tabs as well as 3 more currencies. Below that is Railway, which is some sort of event where you go along a Monopoly board. You get another currency here, but I couldn't figure out how to spend it, and hey look, I got experience crystals, that's currency number 6. Next is a mine event where you choose a reward then randomly swing for it. If you miss, you can of course buy more mining picks from the shop, but clicking on the option doesn't even take you to the right tab, which is kinda funny. All of that was in one drop-down menu, containing 5 different currencies and 3 different redirects towards the shop. Moving along the UI, we have the shop icon, which is of course the largest icon. Thankfully, we've already covered this, except hey, I missed the fact that there are 3 separate battle passes. The bag with your items is simple and thankfully doesn't have any monetization. Oh wait, you can pay premium currency to expand your bag space. To the right of that is the town, which is another massive sub-menu. God damn it, let's just go rapid fire. Awakening lets you use dupes to strengthen characters. Ranking shows people's progress in the first person to clear each chapter, which of course has rewards because dopamine. Market is a completely separate shop that sells other stuff for various currencies, including currency number 7. Guilds and friends I refuse to click on in case people I know find out I played this game, and then there's another separate store with our 8th currency. Mercifully, I can't click on the other 2 options yet. Back to the main screen, Hero takes you to your characters with a bunch of sub-menus to upgrade them. Quests are not, as you might expect, missions that you can partake in the world, and are of course just more checkboxes to click to get rewards. And what's that? Hey, it's our 9th and 10th currencies in Jaeger tickets and mission shards. Also in 11th I didn't notice until now, which enhances equipment. At the bottom right, we have another daily reward system, and then hallelujah, at the right of the screen we finally get to the point where it's showing us actual content. There's raids, which are way too high level for me. Then there's arena, which is PvP in a gacha game, so I'm going to go ahead and pretend it doesn't exist. After that, there's an infinite tower of challenges that I'm too low level for. And then there's dungeons, which is the first content I can actually do. They're extremely basic encounters where you get items after each battle, but holy shit, it's actually gameplay. I played this for a bit and wasn't strong enough to get through it all, but I can't complain because I got a break from going through this monstrosity of menus. This is the best content in the game because the choice of items combined with an auto battler allows me to pretend I'm playing Dota Underlords. I also see the higher level dungeons have power levels listed in the hundreds of millions, which makes me laugh out loud because my power is about 100,000 after spending all my upgrade materials. There's something called the Forest of Trials, which is another sort of roguelike thing, which is basically the same thing as dungeons but worse, but hey, it's actual gameplay. I played this for a second before the game got stuck on an infinite loading screen and I had to restart, but to wrap it up, it grants trial tokens for our 12th currency. There might be more, I'm not looking. The main story is above that, and we finally wrap up with 3 currencies with plus symbols next to those that you can probably guess the point of. Messing around in the Forest of Trials and the dungeons takes me the rest of the way through my 3rd hour. Before my 4th hour, I took a break to eat dinner, which was a mistake. When I return, it takes something like 5 minutes to click through all the new pop-ups and notifications. Returning to the main story, the boredom is seeping in. There's just absolutely nothing going on here. If your numbers are bigger, you watch your team win, otherwise you lose. No agency, no decision points. I fully admit that team composition and positioning could become a factor once you reach the end game, but 1, getting there is going to be boring, and 2, the amount of monetization this game has means reaching the end game will cost you hundreds of hours or more money than it would take to buy the entire series. I can slowly see the enemy numbers creep up and know what awaits. Eventually I'll hit a wall where I can't do anything, where I'm encouraged to come back every day for my daily scraps to hopefully spike my power. The only question is whether that will happen before I hit 5 hours or not. The story is illegible and the combat is like watching paint dry. In desperate search for something to do, I return to that tower thing I skipped over earlier. It's just more combat, nothing else. I play it until I'm not strong enough to keep going and then return to the story. At this point, I get pinged from work and answer messages on Slack for about 10 minutes, which I'm still counting as part of the 5 hours because fuck this game. This 4th hour touches on the only interesting story element in the entire game. It's a rather interesting part of the Trails lore that the games haven't touched upon enough. In the country this takes place in, there was a disaster where a giant pillar of salt appeared out of nowhere, turning anyone who touched it into salt themselves. This is something that likely has significance to the overall story in the series that hasn't been touched on yet, and this is the first time in a while I've seen anything mentioning it. The game doesn't do anything with it, but it's nice to see it brought up again. I begin to hit enemies finally dwarfing my level. As I go to level up my characters, I note that the amount of resources is increasing exponentially as I only have enough to level 2 characters to the next breakpoint. This makes me thankful that it's almost over. There's no gameplay story harmony here. You have a cutscene where you say you're going to fight your fellow soldiers to prove who's stronger, and then you just fight monsters instead. After clearing chapter 4, I get a pop-up for a new character I can claim for free. This character's name is Duvally the Swift, and the final fit of laughter this game causes for me is here, where the shoddy translation refers to her as Speed Dewberry. I use my last experience crystals and begin chapter 5. I lose, level up as much as I can, and lose again. Finally, peacefully, with the paywall successfully hit, 4 hours and 21 minutes in, I am done. Okay, so this game is trash. I doubt even the random Taiwanese studio they contracted to make this would deny that. It's not meant to be good. It's meant to get Falcom some money. Through scummy practices, sure, but I understand them wanting a bit more financial freedom. They self-publish and release a game every year, likely due to necessity. Everyone wants to be the next Fire Emblem Heroes, a low-budget mobile game grossing over $1 billion that has likely funded the main series for the rest of human history. But games coming out these days are too late to the party. People interested in gachas are likely already entrenched in one that came out a decade ago or playing one of the newer ones like Wuthering Waves, which blow most gachas out of the water by having actual enjoyable gameplay. So let's try to meet Falcom halfway here. If they want to make something like this, how would they make it good? We spent 4 hours on this pointless exercise so far, so why not add another pointless exercise on top of it? And to take a look at what could work, let's go all the way back to the intro of this video where I mentioned the one mobile and gacha game exception that I actually play, a game that easily could serve as a template for a successful Trails mobile game. That game is Honkai Star Rail. Now, I'm not going to recommend Honkai. It does the standard industry practices of FOMO and time gating that are still predatory despite the game's quality, and I have to stress that part of the reason I enjoy it is that I've gotten extremely lucky with my free pulls and I don't really have an addictive personality. I've gotten by only really buying the battle passes. But it's a turn-based story-focused gacha game, and Trails is a turn-based story-focused series. And everything it does is something Trails could follow closely at almost every turn. First is the fact that the game has an original story with original characters. There's plenty of parts in the Trails universe that haven't been explored and could serve as a staging point for something new, possibly using side challenges to take you through story moments of the main series to justify old characters appearing as playable. But do something new for the main story, don't just adapt an anime. Honkai also makes basically the entirety of its story content playable without paying anything. You can find plenty of powerful units for free. There's no useless rarities of characters, and you're guaranteed 1 4-star for every 10 pulls, which Northern War doesn't do. The first world especially is designed for people using very basic units. Either the ones that are the focus of the story, which you get for free, or normal 4 stars that are plentiful and also given for free. The gacha only really becomes relevant if you enjoy the game enough to want to keep playing the endgame challenges separate from the story, or vary up gameplay by giving yourself more team compositions. Despite this less aggressive approach, Honkai Star Rail is usually first or second in terms of revenue among gacha games because it gets players invested with quality before asking for money. Players get so invested in the story that they want to pull new characters just because they like their personality or design. This is all stuff a Trails mobile game could do easily, and on top of this it could easily revisit the iconic mobile-friendly visual style of the Sky and Crossbell games. The main titles even already use build variety as a major gameplay hook, as you try to figure out the right combinations of crafts, quartz, master quartz, stats, and link abilities to make an ideal team. Everything is already there, they would just need to put it together in a package that doesn't make the average player want to chew glass. None of this has much point, as the chances of a decent Trails mobile game are basically zero. Northern War represents Falcom's second failure in this space. A previous title that didn't get a global release seems to actually use the turn-based system I think would fit well, but it was made by the same company as Northern War, so I imagine it was also total crap. The point of this isn't necessarily that I hope for some playable Trails gacha, it's that there are obvious avenues to making this game not awful that were just completely ignored. So what did I learn from all this? The easy answer is nothing. It was a game that looked like crap and ended up being crap. And I struggle to come up with anything productive I gained from doing all this. If I had to search for a silver lining, I gained some appreciation for the fact that this stuff has never invaded or replaced most single-player RPGs. There was a worry when stuff like this started to become popular that companies would just abandon making higher budget stuff altogether in favor of heavily monetized mobile titles. But there's room for both Fire Emblem Heroes and Fire Emblem Three Houses to exist, and that's a good thing. Console gaming is held firm in the face of far lower profit margins, and the Trails series is no exception. Hell, Trails Through Daybreak is coming out in a few weeks. I've already played that and it's amazing. But it's still worth it to point and laugh at these failures. If you want to leverage a niche fan base with a gacha game, at least make it not shit. Thanks for watching. These videos take a long time to make, so if you enjoyed it and want to support the channel, I'll put a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. Next video will be on Trails Through Daybreak, which will be a much more pleasant experience for all of us.